All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur and Anna Kasparian with you guys. Are we here to save the day? I guess. Does the day need saving? Usually. Oh wait, I just got a text. Oh, it's from the day. It says thanks.
You're insane. You're just crazy.
All right, we got a lot of stories for you guys. Lots of governors. We'll go to Florida. We'll go to New York. We're gonna go to Texas for a senator who was missing for a little while. I heard he was on the Appalachian Trail. All right, fun show. Stop it is what you're gonna be saying at the end of it. And we will, because it'll be them. All right, Anna, let's get started.
Yeah, Cenk, we got a lot of governors. We got a lot of good ones, a lot of bad ones. Actually, mostly bad ones. DeSantis is one of them. So let's talk about that. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has decided to steer his coronavirus vaccine distribution to wealthier neighborhoods, and that's led to some backlash. And he responded to that backlash by threatening to refuse distribution of vaccines to areas where the complaints are coming from. So let's start off with the details of what he's doing in regard to this vaccine distribution. He's providing seniors living in two of Manatee County's wealthiest zip codes, giving them special access to the vaccine. So one of them is Lakewood Ranch, and it's important to keep that name in mind because it's a planned community in Southwest Florida that has ties to some of Ron DeSantis's biggest donors, Liz and Dick Uihlein. The governor called the developer Rex Jensen and arranged for 3,000 doses to be delivered to a vaccination site for Lakewood Ranch and other wealthy neighborhoods in Manatee County. Jensen is the president and CEO of Schroeder Manatee Ranch, the parent company of the planned Lakewood Ranch community in Southwest Florida. Now, where do the Uihleins come in? Well, Schroeder Manatee Ranch is owned by their family. While a precise breakdown of family ownership is unclear, family members Liz and Dick Uihlein of Illinois are some of the biggest Republican donors in the county, giving $26 million nationally to more than 60 congressional candidates. In fact, they've also contributed $900,000 to the Friends of Ron DeSantis political committee in 2018 and 2019. And so the commissioner for Manatee County, Misty Servia, is wondering why have these specific areas been chosen? This doesn't make any sense. For the life of me, she says, I can't understand why we would vaccinate the most affluent neighborhoods in the county ahead of everyone else, especially the underserved neighborhoods and large numbers of manufactured home parks in our community. So she's basically saying, there are poorer parts of Manatee County that we could be focusing on right now. And it's strange that Ron DeSantis isn't going in that direction. But he doesn't take kindly to any type of negative feedback or critique. And so he put out this threat.
But look, if Manatee County doesn't like us doing this, then we are totally fine with putting this in counties that want it. And we're totally happy to do that. So anyone that's saying that, let us know. If you want us to send to Sarasota next time, or Charlotte, or Pasco, or wherever, let us know. We're happy to do it. But I think most people, if we have an opportunity to bring vaccines and do it efficiently, I think that they're going to want it.
So Cenk, this is the kind of story that's right up your alley because nothing infuriates you more than money in politics. And this is just such a prime example of how people's lives don't matter, especially when you have corruption playing a role in the decision-making by these lawmakers.
All right, so let's keep it 100% real here. So the Uihleins gave $900,000, as Anna told you, to DeSantis. $900,000 in campaign contributions. Now, does anyone who is not a reporter or a Republican or a corporate Democrat think that that was just for their health? Well, in a sense, I guess it was. It was for the health of their businesses. So understand that the community that got the extra vaccines, the properties are owned by the Uihleins. And this county got 3,000 extra doses that it was supposed to get. And DeSantis personally ordered that they get the extra doses. And the pop-up sites happen to be right next to their properties. What an amazing coincidence. After they gave a campaign contribution of nearly $1 million to Rick DeSantis. Everybody knows, even if you're a conservative, you're the most right-wing Florida guy in the world, right? You know that's a bribe, and then they got their return on their investment. Now everybody knows you go to the Ulan properties, don't worry, you get special privileges. The politicians will do you favors. If you're poor or middle class in Florida, and even if you're a Republican voter, oh God, even if, who cares? They don't care about you. The only thing they care about is, am I looking out for my really wealthy donors? And so my favorite part of this story is kind of unrelated. A Republican strategist talking about how DeSantis is going to be a great vice presidential pick for Trump in 2024 said he has great, quote, blue collar appeal.
Oh yeah, that guy definitely.
Yeah, what blue collar people usually do, Anna, is they help their giant, really wealthy donor, billionaire donors get an advantage over actual blue collar workers. Sure. What an unbelievable myth that these political consultants and their friends in the media helped us spin.
But I'm glad that you mentioned what the political consultant said, because there is, in my opinion, a concerted effort by the Republican Party to promote Ron DeSantis for a possible run in 2024. And so I have a few different examples to share with you, starting with a Fox News appearance featuring Matt Gaetz of Florida. And during this interview, he talked about how great Ron DeSantis is. He said that he would make a great 2024 presidential candidate. And then, wow, look at that. That same night, Ron DeSantis also made an appearance on Fox News to boast about how his economy in Florida is thriving and he's made all the right decisions and everyone wants to live in Florida. I mean, just really, puffing up his chest and pretending as if he's been an effective leader when he can't even put a COVID-19 mask on if his life depended on it. And in a lot of cases, people's lives do depend on it. Now, following Trump's acquittal on Saturday, the hashtag Trump DeSantis 2024 started to trend. And then you have, as you mentioned, some of these political advisors and consultants trying to push this message out there about how great he is. The Right Side Broadcasting Network says that the Trump DeSantis ticket would be a dream ticket. And then Mitch McConnell's top advisor, a guy named Josh Holmes, is saying that Ron DeSantis is having a moment. And hopefully it's just that, a moment. But to be quite honest with you, when it comes to potential Republican candidates, I mean, is there really any good option? It's just that Ron DeSantis is very Trump-like in the way he handles any type of criticism, right? I mean, what you saw in that video where he's essentially threatening any of the critics by refusing to distribute the vaccine to those areas is exactly what you could expect from Trump, right? No apologies. Very transparent about his wrongdoing, but refusing to take any responsibility for it. So, I think that Trump has certainly emboldened that kind of behavior, and Ron DeSantis has taken it and run with it and is running with it. And it appears that some Republicans really like it and they're promoting him as a result.
Yeah, so we showed you that video of him putting on the mask. I know it's silly, but it's fun. I'm gonna get to a serious point in a second. But that was in the middle of the pandemic. And apparently he'd never put on a mask before. So normally the mask goes like this and you put it behind your ears. Almost all of you know that, right? Look at what he does. Over his head and then one ear. Why would it be one ear? Why would it be one ear? When you get to one ear and it's coming around like this, that's when you go, oh wait, I did this wrong and I'm on camera. This is really embarrassing. I gotta figure this thing out. Okay, all right. Now, Matt Gaetz in promoting DeSantis said, well, he's doing such a great job in Florida. Quote, there's a lot of Florida envy right now. Okay, well.
No, I assure you there is not. Okay. There is not.
Matt Gaetz, congratulations. You're the first person to ever say the words Florida envy, because it's never existed, okay? And look, I lived in Miami, I love Miami, but everybody knows, even the whole world knows what is going on with Florida. Why does every insane story come out of Florida? There ain't no Florida envy. But now back to the important stuff. So Liz Uline is obviously one of the Ulines here who gave the $900,000 to DeSantis, and by the way, the $26 million to Republicans. I mean, they're not just bribing DeSantis. What do you think $26 million from business owners is to a politician? Everyone knows it's a bribe, unless you work in politics or media. Anyway, Liz Uline, I'm quoting Sun Sentinel here, was also one of the biggest critics of the anti-COVID-19 lockdowns, calling the pandemic overhyped. Oh, it was overhyped until it might affect you, in which case you called up one of your corrupt cronies and like, hey, DeSantis, right now, Ronnie boy, remember when we bought you? Give us extra vaccines, and definitely before poor or middle class people. Wait, I thought you said you were overhyped. Do you want money again? Shut up and do as you're told. DeSantis like, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, right? And that's why they love him in the Republican circles. They're like, oh, that bitch will do anything for money. So that's why he's a rising star among Republicans. By the way, where do the Ulines get their money? Dick Uline is a descendant of the founder of the Schlitz Brewing Company. Because the Republicans have this image of like, oh, we pulled ourselves up by the bootstraps. It was so good, entrepreneurs. He just inherited it. He's just a stupid schmuck who got free money and then bought off a bunch of politicians to make more money. That's how crony capitalism works.
I like beer. I still like beer. I'm just thinking about that brewing.
By the way, Schlitz had to put up a statement today saying they're not involved with the company. We're so sorry. We don't know. And DeSantis then said, "All right, forget the mask. I'll put on a bandana."
Man, dude, Florida, please, come on, guys. All you Cubanos in Hialeah, like, come on, really? I know you guys don't like socialism, but really, this guy, stop voting for people like Ron DeSantis. Please do better. He doesn't care about the poor Cubans in Hialeah. Let me just tell you that.
Okay, by the way, this is socialism. It's socialism for the rich. The rich get a lot more than anyone else, and it's a give out. What is it? It's a give out of our money and our vaccines to the people who bribe the politicians. By the way, this is about Trump, and you can get it at shoptyt.com. Had to throw in a little plug there.
I know you, of course you did. All right, well, let's move on to the next story, please, because we have more on governors in the country. So let's talk about Cuomo. So things are not looking so great for the governor of New York because an assemblyman from New York is alleging that Governor Andrew Cuomo threatened to, quote, destroy him if he didn't show the governor support after it was discovered that Cuomo had concealed the real numbers of coronavirus deaths in nursing homes, as much as 50%, by the way. And so Assemblyman Ron Kim, who's had some policy disagreements with Cuomo in the past, says that he got this phone call and received some threats from Cuomo as a result. Let's take a listen to what he's alleging.
I was one of 6 lawmakers in that private meeting for 2 hours with Secretary DeRosa when she accidentally told us the truth, that there was a cover-up and fear that the information would be weaponized against Governor Cuomo. So that moment, I had to tell the truth and I had to let the public know what happened. And Governor Cuomo called me the next day at 8 p.m. while I was about to bathe my kids. I was with my wife, and for 10 minutes, he berated me. He yelled at me. He told me that my career will be over. He's been biting his tongue for months against me, and I had tonight, not tomorrow, tonight, to issue a new statement, essentially asking me to lie. And asking me, like, I heard and I saw a crime the other day. And he's asking me that I did not see that crime. This is what he said. Are you a lawyer? That's the first question he asked. And I said, I'm not. Then you must have not understood what my secretary told you. She didn't say any of that. She said, we had to work on the federal government first and then the state. That's what she said. Go back to your staff and the speaker's staff, draft a statement and issue that tonight. Not tomorrow, do it tonight.
So he goes on to say that Cuomo said, we're in this business together and we don't cross certain lines. And he said, I hadn't seen his wrath and that he can destroy me. He also said this, no man has ever spoken to me like that in my entire life. At some point, he tried to humiliate me, asking, are you a lawyer? I didn't think so. You're not a lawyer. It almost felt like, in retrospect, he was trying to bait me and anger me and say something inappropriate. I'm glad I didn't. And so what he was referencing in the beginning of that video was, meeting with lawmakers from the state of New York. And that's where DeRosa, secretary working for Governor Cuomo, basically admitted that there was some worry of a federal investigation, which is why they were concealing the coronavirus death numbers coming from nursing homes. And they intentionally put out numbers that undercounted deaths by as much as 50%. So it's just, and his wife, by the way, Kim's wife, overheard parts of the conversation and also spoke to reporters to confirm what she had heard. So Cuomo's not looking real good. And honestly, Cenk, I'm not really that surprised, considering the fact that for anyone paying any attention to Cuomo's actions in the beginning of the pandemic, you can tell that he has no problem doing things that are insanely cruel, like cutting funding to Medicaid. He knew about the severity of this pandemic and still chose to pursue cutting funds to Medicaid. So when he was getting all of these, complimentary reports and everyone was talking about how great he was, I just feel like reporters were comparing Cuomo to Trump, who clearly had no interest in dealing with coronavirus and taking it seriously. Trump will make anyone look good. But if you just looked at Cuomo's actions objectively, he wasn't that great either.
Yeah, well, all right. So there is actually a little bit of a funny part ending to this story that I'm going to get to at the end. But first, the serious stuff. So, Anna, to your point about the Medicaid cuts, it's part of the problem with national media or mainstream media throughout the country. If Cuomo is lying, they will cover that because that is not substantive. It is a situation where, okay, we can clearly say that, they had the wrong numbers, but cutting Medicaid is a policy issue. And there we have to be neutral. I don't know, in the middle of a pandemic, whether you have healthcare or you don't, I can't tell which one is the right thing. I'm a reporter, I can't tell. If I said it, it would be biased. So I'm not going, and plus there's a massive centrist bias. So they love establishment Democrats like Cuomo. So in the middle of a pandemic, him cutting Medicaid is actually worse than any of these actions, but it'll get almost no criticism from the press because they'll think, well, I can't say that. Oh, he misstated numbers, great, we could run with that. So now secondly, the bullying issue. We covered this, I think, on a story about another politician who I also don't like last week, and I defended them in a sense. And here I'm going to make a similar point. It's not to defend Cuomo. It's that people that are outraged by the bullying behind the scenes of politicians, I guess the main culprit is the media. It's not the viewers, it's not the readers, because they never hear about it because the media covers it up. But that stuff happens 24/7 in politics. Nonstop. When I was briefly running for office, I had local candidates come to me all the time talking about how Democratic leaders in California would bully them regularly. You're not allowed to say this. You're never allowed to criticize us. If you do, even if you win, you'll never be able to introduce a bill. We'll ruin your career. This stuff happens nonstop in politics, and yes, in Democratic politics. But if you tell the press, like, oh, no way, no, that's our beloved California, well, in that case, it's not the governor, but New York governor, it's this person, it's that person. And God help you if you're an outsider or a progressive, because they'll never believe you. They'll always believe the bully instead. So now things are beginning to change. The good news is beginning to change. So that's why you're seeing some of these stories. And it's because of progressive people like Assemblyman Kim going, I'm just gonna tell people. Like, you keep telling me you're gonna ruin my life. Have at it, Hoss. Let's see how it turns out. I'm telling people, I don't think you can. And I want to add one more thing to that, Anna. How do they ruin people's lives? There's two principal ways. One, that's it. We don't care about your constituents. We don't care that it's also my voters. You're never allowed to introduce a bill again. Okay, leadership will freeze you out. You'll lose committee seats, etc. But that's actually the milder version of it. And you're seeing the more significant version right now. It's in all the stories. They bury you with their friends in the press. So in the stories now are starting to pop up attacks against Assemblyman Kim. Oh, did you know he did this and this in 2015? Wait, why are we talking about something Kim did in 2015? Oh, because Cuomo's people leaked a hatchet attack against Kim, and you ran it because that's how they bury their opponents. The press helps them bully outsiders and progressives.
So we have a poll on this because state lawmakers are currently working to possibly strip Cuomo of some of his executive power, expanded executive power related to the coronavirus pandemic. And so the question is, should New York State's Democrats strip Andrew Cuomo of his emergency pandemic powers? You can choose one of two options, very easy, yes or no. And if you want to participate in this poll, just go to tyt.com/polls/Cuomo. And by the way, Cuomo is up for re-election next year. Relevant information.
Yeah, no question. Look, oftentimes our audience surprises us, and so maybe there's a lot of Democrats out there who still say, no, Cuomo did an okay job and he should have that power. So I'm curious what you guys think. But let me end on the funny note. And there's no diss on Assemblyman Kim, who I obviously just complimented here for his courage. But at the end of the CNN report, they say, they quote Kim as saying, that night was very, very troubling because we couldn't sleep. And she's telling me, his wife is telling me, what did you do to us? Stop what you're doing, please. She feared for my future and for my life. I'm not sure I would have said that quote about my wife in a situation like this. I know what he's trying to say, which is that we felt significantly threatened, but stay strong, Kim family. And the reality is, as long as you expose them in a big enough way, they won't be able to do anything to you because they're usually hit you by using the press without anybody seeing it. And by the way, to the audience, if you see any nonsense stories about Assemblyman Kim popping up all over the place now, you know that reporter is corrupt because they're working with Cuomo and taking leaks, and they know that he's attacking and trying to bury Kim as we speak, as Cuomo actually threatened to do. So, and disregard those stories. You want to talk about Kim at another time? Fine, but as a distraction now, or as vengeance against him for exposing Cuomo, that is unconscionable. Every reporter should tell Cuomo's office, under no circumstances will they accept a nonsense leak like that, and you shouldn't read it, and you should throw it in the trash where it belongs.
All right, well, when we come back, Ted Cruz thought he could just rosé all day and not get caught, but he did. And so he's facing the consequences today. We'll tell you more about Ted Cruz's vacation adventures when we come back.
We need to talk about a relatively new show called the Republic, or UNFTR. As a Young Turks fan, you already know that the government, the media, and corporations are constantly peddling lies that serve the interests of the rich and powerful. But now there's a podcast dedicated to unraveling those lies, debunking the conventional wisdom. In each episode of the Republic, or UNFTR, the host delves into a different historical episode or topic that's generally misunderstood or purposely obfuscated by the so-called powers that be, featuring in-depth research, razor-sharp commentary, and just the right amount of vulgarity. The UNFTR podcast takes a sledgehammer to what you thought you knew about some of the nation's most sacred historical cows. But don't just take my word for it. The New York Times described UNFTR as consistently compelling and educational, aiming to challenge conventional wisdom and upend the historical narratives that were taught in school. For as the great philosopher Yoda once put it, you must unlearn what you have learned. And that's true whether you're in Jedi training or you're uprooting and exposing all the propaganda and disinformation you've been fed over the course of your lifetime. So search for UNFTR in your podcast app today and get ready to get informed, angered, and entertained all at the same time.
back on the during the break, read your comments. Let's go to the member section. Meg writes in, Cenk must have an IV of Too Strong Coffee. How did you know? TooStrongCoffee.com/TYT. It's so good, you could just throw it on your face. Watch. Okay, I'm kidding. There's no coffee in there. Okay. I'm in a weird mood. I'm in a fun mood. All right. Yes, you too can be in this good a mood if you go to TooStrongCoffee.com/TYT. Anyway, don't set me up like that, Meg. But I love you for it. It's all McDonald's writes in, new name for DeSantis, Dumb Corleone. But remember, Trump was Dumb Corleone. Republicans kind of like Dumb Corleone. Greg makes a good point. Didn't DeSantis also get busted earlier for trying to make the vaccines available exclusively at Publix for similarly corrupt dealings? I seem to remember that happening as well. Yep, that's right. Or maybe you're just having Florida envy. Mr. Lundberg writes in, it would seem South Dakota, Texas, and Florida are all trying for the gold in the nation's worst governor Olympics. Pretty much true. I'm just throwing this hat in name in the hat a little bit. I'm just saying. No more trigonometry writes in, Cuomo's aides always reportedly said he refuses to apologize for anything and is too defiant to admit his own mistakes. The man is a Democratic Trump. And guys, look, on the bullying issue, it's old school. They used to do it and it used to work 1,000,000,000%. The reason it doesn't work as well anymore, I hope it was clear enough from what I was saying, is because of the internet. Because they can't stop the news from coming out on the internet. In the old days, it was so easy to control the press. And that way they could intimidate anyone they want and they get the press to destroy them. And so it's a new day and they're having trouble adjusting, which is great. Ricardo Ristorcelli writes in, Cuomo's been corrupt for a long time. He used to stack the state legislature with corporate Democrats so that he could use them as an excuse for not passing progressive legislation. Kind of what Biden's doing with Manchin and Sinema, huh? Interesting. Anyways, that is 100% true about Cuomo. He's always been super corporate, very donor friendly. And so any like hero worship of Cuomo is preposterous. New Young Turks members who hit the join button below, K Muffin, super fun name. Eric Sutter, Survival is Magic, also a fun name. And Ginger Sionik. You hit it, you become a Young Turk. It's you know what? It's kind of like magic, like survival. So you can also upgrade through that. If you're watching anywhere else, tyt.com/join is a great way to sign up. And then Twitch, all these folks, look at this. Irie Man cheered 100 bits, Dragon Share 100, AJ Duenas gifted 5 tier 1 subs, Platinum Yeti cheered 1,000 bits, Obi-Wan Kenobi 7 gifts. Of course, New Rock Shirt gifted a tier 1 to someone else, Tempo 100 bits. Nothing but love for you guys, you Twitchers. Love you. All right, back on TYT, checking it out with you guys. I'm gonna do a quick promo. Did you know the damage reports on TikTok? How fun is that? TikTok, not just for Anna Kasparian anymore. I mean, I know that she dominates there and people are talking about it. They actually are. But anyway, but John Irola and the damage report is also on TikTok now. So check that out. All right, Casper, what's next? Can't hear you. Can't hear you. Sorry.
That I never do that. Sorry about that. All right, well, let's talk about what's going down in Texas. As you guys know, There is a massive winter storm in Texas, and because of the fact that Texas has its own power grid that's deregulated, highly privatized, and inefficient, people are left without power, without water that's safe enough to drink. In fact, most people are being told to boil their water because they're worried that it's unsafe, but it's kind of hard to do that when you don't have any electricity. But former Texas Governor Rick Perry thinks that his opinion still matters and is speaking on behalf of the millions of Texans who are now dealing with the ramifications of privatized utilities. And so he says this: those watching on the left may see the situation in Texas as an opportunity to expand their top-down radical proposals. Texans would be without electricity for longer than 3 days to keep the federal government out of their business. So essentially what he's saying is, Texans would rather go without water or power during a brutal winter storm just to own the libs, okay? Just so they don't have to deal with any regulations that would actually protect them from what they're experiencing right now. Yeah, and so by the way, so Texas's power grid, we've talked about it quite a bit on the show lately as a result of these rolling blackouts that are taking place. But it's run by the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, or ERCOT, and it occupies a unique distinction in the United States in that it does not cross state lines, but more importantly, it's not under the oversight of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. And Texas allows these companies, these energy companies, to essentially regulate themselves. They get to decide how they distribute energy. They get to decide all of that. So former Governor Rick Perry also said, try not to let whatever the crisis of the day is take your eye off of having a resilient grid that keeps America safe personally, economically, and strategically. I mean, that grid keeps people so safe that dozens of people have already died in Texas as a result of this winter storm and not having the necessary electricity and power needed to keep your home warm. People are going to shelters right now in order to have access to a warm place. It's just been a complete and utter disaster. And Rick Perry's like, oh, we're really owning the libs, aren't we? Okay.
Yeah, quick side note on this, and then I'm gonna read you some important quotes. Folks like Joe Rogan went down to Texas because they're like, I don't want any stinking government of California interfering with me. I'm gonna go to Texas where they got no government. How's that working out for you, Joe? I hope you're not complaining to the government right now, because #freedom. Okay, so
look, I thought about that too. Sorry, you opened that can of worms, so I'm going to comment on it. I thought about that as well, and to be sure, I mean, clearly Texas has its issues. But let's also be real. California has serious issues as well. I mean, think about the power companies like PG&E that refuse to update its equipment because they want to cut costs. They want to make sure that they make as much profit as possible. And when downed power lines led to massive wildfires in the state, and the company had to deal with lawsuits, guess what Newsom did? He bailed the companies out. He bailed PG&E out. Taxpayers, meaning taxpayers, did that. So, and by the way, obviously we have a huge homeless population here. There are all sorts of issues in California as well. So, I know that people want to point fingers, but let's also just be truthful about how right now there's a lack of effective governing in every state, and California is no exception.
No. But let's be clear. I'm pointing two fingers. Okay, I'm not taking anything away. So first of all, it's one of the problems is underlying in both California and Texas, which is corruption. So PG&E was a giant donor to Democratic politicians, and then Democratic politicians bailed them out. They start fires nonstop. There's never any accountability. And by the way, what did Gavin Newsom do in California? Oh, we got a coronavirus pandemic. It's a great opportunity to serve my donors. So he gives a giant contract to Blue Shield, his #1 donor. So, and what did the governors of Texas do, including Abbott and Rick Perry? Nonstop corruption, nonstop deregulation of the fossil fuel industry. Who are their top donors? It's the same exact problem. But layered on top in Texas is the second problem of this so-called ideology where they say, oh, government sucks and we shouldn't have any. And then when government doesn't work and things break down and people start freezing to death and 16 people are already dead, they go, oh, can you believe it? It's AOC's fault. It's Green New Deal's fault. Green New Deal doesn't even exist. It's not in any legislation. AOC has nothing to do with Texas. No, you morons deregulated the industry. And this is so important, guys. You need to understand this. And Perry's still bragging about it. Oh yeah, we deregulated. We let the companies handle it instead of the government, man, because we believe in freedom in Texas. No, you believe in bribery in Texas. You deregulated so they could save costs. So when you deregulated, the government, there was no cops on the street. There's cops for you. If you're a minority, you're poor, you're middle class, cops will come crack down on you. But if you're a giant corporation that bought off the government through crony capitalism, no cops on the street. So why did this break down, guys? And Houston Chronicle explains this to everyone who has covered this, explains it right if you're looking at the details, which is mainly fossil fuels froze, their pipes froze. That is where almost all of the energy comes in this case. And by the way, ERCOT actually plans for the wind turbines to slow down in the winter and for solar energy to slow down. They already had taken that into account. What they did not account for was a massive freezing of the lines. Why did that happen for natural gas, i.e. oil and gas? Why did it happen? Because they refused to insulate them to save money. So the crony capitalism bought them a bunch of corrupt Republican politicians, which they used to save money on insulating the pipes. So when it came to the situation where they needed them to not freeze, oops, it turns out the corruption led to you not having any power and freezing to death. So Abbott and Perry and all those guys could get rich and get more power. That's how politics works.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And for Perry to turn around and say, like, I'm gonna go ahead and speak on behalf of Texans and say that they prefer this over regulations that would have protected them from what they're experiencing right now. Like, it's so gross and insulting. And I know that the right-wing media echo chamber is pretty powerful and toxic and certainly somehow resonates with a lot of conservative voters. But I really hope that they're waking up to the reality of what crony capitalism forces them to go through at moments of crisis, not just with this winter storm, but with the pandemic, with everything that we've experienced over the last year alone should make it abundantly clear that this system is not working and it's only failing people. All right, well, let's move on to
last thing I was gonna say is, so Rick Perry's basically Marie Antoinette here. So he says, well, if they can't have energy, why don't they have freedom instead? So yeah, Rick, you're incredibly wealthy because of all of your donors, supporting you, and you have all this power and you have all this privilege. And I'm positive you're not freezing to death. But the last thoughts of the 16 people who died wasn't, oh, thank God for my freedom.
So we have a pretty awesome story about Ted Cruz. So let's discuss. While millions of Texans have been suffering without power or safe drinking water in some cases in the middle of this brutal winter storm, Texas Governor Ted Cruz decided that it would be a great time to lay on a beach in Cancun, in Mexico. Apparently, Republicans want to blame Mexicans for stealing our politicians as well. And so this story in the beginning was not confirmed. There were suspicions that Ted Cruz was leaving the country to go on a nice little vacay while his own constituents were suffering. And then all of a sudden, more and more evidence started coming in, including this photo of him in a first-class lounge doing what politicians do best: lounge, relax, go on recess, take a load off. But it still wasn't confirmed that this was the right picture. I mean, is it confirmed that it's a current picture? What if it's a picture from a previous vacation he went on? And then David Schuster did confirm it, writing, just confirmed Senator Ted Cruz and his family flew to Cancun tonight for a few days at a resort they visited before. Cruz seems to believe there isn't much for him to do in Texas for the millions of fellow Texans who remain without electricity or water and are literally freezing. It's so good. And by the way, there was some great investigative reporting here. Like, for instance, in an effort to also confirm the story, Jake Sherman, who always has the hot goss, tweeted this. And I didn't know that this stuff was public. It's actually pretty terrifying. Probably shouldn't be public. But nonetheless, here's the upgrade list for the afternoon's flight from Cancun to Houston. Looks like Ted Cruz is on his way back. He just narrowly missing the upgrade list. That's assuming that Crew R is him and I do. And guess what? It was Ted Cruz, and he included the listing that shows all the people that were on the flight, and you can see Ted Cruz's name on there. And Cenk, his explanation is just so embarrassing. But before we get to that, I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about it.
Yeah. So first of all, explanation is awesome. Second of all, there's an awesome update that's coming up. You're gonna love the update. But let's all note for the record that Anna's fascination with the phrase "hot goss" is also awesome. And let's also note that David Schuster is on Rebel headquarters. You can see so many of his videos on TYT's channel, RHQ. So check that out. And before we get to his pathetic explanation, I just like to chant, "Build a wall, build a wall." What happened? Oh no, Anna, I figured out what happened with Mexico. As soon as he got down to Cancun, Mexico sent some of its worst back to us. They're sending criminals. They're sending politicians, they're sending grease balls. Okay, we got to build a wall.
No, unfortunately, we tend to send our worst to Mexico because I'm sure no one wants Ted Cruz vacationing in their resort, but nonetheless, he was there. But he returned home quickly as soon as there was evidence and confirmation that he had left town to go vacation while his constituents were suffering. More on that in just a minute. But he did provide what is possibly the worst excuse of all time. Let's take a listen to that.
Texas is going through horrific storms, and millions of Texans have lost power, have lost heat, and have been hurt. And our family was among them. We had no heat and no power. Yesterday, my daughters asked if they could take a trip with some friends, and Heidi and I agreed, so I flew down with them last night, dropped them off here, and now I'm headed back to Texas and back to continuing to work to try to get the power on. What's happening in Texas is unacceptable, and a lot of Texans are hurting.
No, there's no family member that he's unwilling to throw under the bus for his own political career. He'll do it he'll throw his wife under the bus. We all know about that. He'll, certainly support and phone bank for someone who called his wife ugly. And then now he's using his own children as a shield, as an excuse for why he did the most selfish thing he can possibly do as a lawmaker with his constituents suffering right now as we speak. And there is an update to that in just a minute. But remember, he just made it appear as though he didn't really go on a vacation. That he's been here and that he's just trying to be a good dad. That is not the case at all. I have evidence of that. But before we get to it, Cenk, go ahead.
Okay, I love this. I was just gonna go to Kroger's, drop off the kids for like 5 minutes, and then come back. Who flies to Cancun to drop off the kids and wife and come back? That's not a thing that anybody does. He's not an Uber driver. He went on vacation, of course. But guys, the most important part of this is that it was not pre-planned. Cruz said it himself. Oh, they had a week off, and they put out a statement about this earlier too. His daughters had a week off because of the storm, so they decided to go down to Cancun because of that week off. That means Cruz it wasn't like, oh, look, we planned this like 4 months ago, and I didn't want to disappoint my family. It was like, oh, everybody's suffering? Win, perfect opportunity to go to Cancun. They used the storm as an opportunity to run away to Mexico. And Cruz was 1,000,000,000% part of that. I mean, look at this shaggy defense.
At TYT, we frequently talk about all the ways that big tech companies are taking control of our online lives, constantly monitoring us and storing and selling our data. But that doesn't mean we have to let them. It's possible to stay anonymous online and hide your data from the prying eyes of big tech. And one of the best ways is with ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN hides your IP address, making your active ID more difficult to trace and sell to advertisers. ExpressVPN also encrypts 100% of your network data to protect you from eavesdroppers and cyber criminals. And it's also easy to install. A single mouse click protects all your devices. But listen, guys, this is important. ExpressVPN is rated #1 by CNET and Wired magazine. So take back control of your life online and secure your data with a top VPN solution available, ExpressVPN. And if you go to expressvpn.com/TYT, you can get 3 extra months for free with this exclusive link just for TYT fans. That's expressvpn.com/TYT. Check it out today.
By the way, wasn't me. Well, so who was it, Ted? My daughters made me do it. Okay. Yeah. Oh my God. But we all know how pathetic Ted Cruz is, and we know what kind of a coward he is. And the one thing he doesn't get, and why people don't like the Republican voters, who are generally hateful people, et cetera, and they can be tricked into almost anything, but they don't like Cruz nearly as much as they like Trump. Why? Because he doesn't have Trump's swagger. When he's caught, Cruz has a couple of tells. He moves his head a lot. So he's like, we were going to go to Cancun, and I just had to drop him off, or I was going to get a ham sandwich and come back, right? And he does, and he looks so defensive, and he looks guilty because he is. Trump would have come back and be like, oh yeah, so what? I was thinking of buying Cancun, and you know what? The best place to go. Why would I want to be cold? Suckers and losers are cold. I went to somewhere hot, okay? And the Republicans who were freezing to death in Texas would have been like, yeah, Trump's so cool, man. What?
Oh, wow. So Jordan Yule just tweeted, the New York Times has provided has been provided with group texts from Ted Cruz's wife that, coupled with reports of a last-minute itinerary change, his little Cancun jaunt was planned through Sunday. And so a Wednesday afternoon departure. So Miss Cruz promptly shared details for a Wednesday afternoon departure, a Sunday return trip, and a luxurious stay at the oceanfront Ritz-Carlton in the meantime. It's just they don't care about you guys. They like Texans. Ted Cruz doesn't care about you, but don't feel so bad about it. No one cares about you. Like no one in politics, for the most part, with a few exceptions, cares about you, cares about working people, cares about any of the struggles you're experiencing right now. Like none of this should be shocking. Like it's a fun story, honestly, right? Like everyone's so animated and excited about it, but it's, for me, it's Tuesday. It's another politician basically demonstrating through his actions how little he cares about the people he's supposedly representing.
Yeah. So look, it's about the lies and it's about the indifference more than it is about Ted Cruz needing to take political action. So we know that Ted Cruz is a federal official and the state officials are supposed to be working on this here. But you know what happens when you have a representative, including your senators? People call you when they're hurt and they need help. And your office is supposed to work around the clock to help them. And so that's why this looks incredibly callous. Look, he's not the only politician to have done this. And Anna's right. I mean, they're all slime. You remember the famous story, Mark Sanford, the former governor of South Carolina? He had gone to visit his lover in Argentina, and he was just missing. And people were like, his staffers were like, we don't know where he is. And then a day later, they put out a statement saying, oh, he just hiking in the Appalachian Trail, and that's why we can't reach him. And I remember calling that out on TYT going, that's a lie. That's the most obvious lie I've ever heard. And other reporters are outraged. They're like, how could you say that? If they say he's on the Appalachian Trail, I'm like, he ain't on the Appalachian Trail. Of course they're lying. Of course they're lying, right? So in this case, oh, my daughters made me do it and I was an Uber driver. I was just dropping them off at Kroger's. No, you were planning to stay through Sunday because you saw a disaster and you didn't think I need to help people, and you never wanted to help them anyway. You just go, hey, I already helped people. I helped the industry that pays me off deregulate and save money, and then you got killed for it. Mission accomplished. I'm off to the Ritz-Carlton. That's who Ted Cruz is.
Dude, your wife was there. Your excuse makes no sense. Your wife was there. Your wife could have taken care of the kids if that's your excuse. Yeah, there's pictures of him and his wife at the airport with their luggage. So it's just such a ridiculous excuse. Just when people tell you who they are, believe them. Ted Cruz, not into you, does not care about you, not interested in representing you. He's in it for himself. Please wake up and stop voting for these clowns. We got to take a break. When we come back, we have more news for you, including Republican hypocrisy when it comes to paid leave. I love this story. You don't want to miss it. Come right back.
Guys, you have written in so many amazing comments, but real quick, Anna mentioned that breaking news from Jordan Ewell. Hello, Jordan Ewell is on the Young Turks. In fact, he's on right after us, after the post game on twitch.tv/TYT. Apparently the legendary Jordan Ewell. So let's do a deep dive and figure it out. So now I'm going to the members, TYT.com. Oh, there he is, deep dive with Jordan. I mean, look, are we all over the news? Schuster, Ewell, I guess. Is TYT Network
Can I just say, yeah, I have a comment on Jordan Ewell. Like I get the reputation for being salty, and I will remain the salt queen. But Jordan Ewell's pretty damn salty himself. So, I mean, I don't really go on Twitter that much these days, but I do get, like, I love his tweets so much that I get notifications for them, and every time I get them, I'm just like, he's right. He's so good. Anyway, follow him on Twitter as well.
Yeah, no, Anna, salt recognizes salt. And so Jordan was one of the first guys on Twitter. That's why he has @Jordan. So he's a real trendsetter, et cetera. All right, so you guys, Jess writes in.
He's a real trendsetter.
Was that a boomer thing to say? Like, trendsetter, trailblazer. Okay.
Sorry.
All right. I'll go forward. All right. All right. So Jess writes in, today in California, people landed the rover on Mars. Today in Texas, people are unable to eat, drink water, and wash themselves. Good updates from California and Texas. And Joe Rogan working out for you, right? Yay, Texas. Okay, Raina Bastet writes in, radical leftists, they, the Texans, are the only ones not on the federal grid. That was another mistake of theirs. Like, we don't need no other federal grid. Nowhere, man, we got this intact there. Oops, you needed the federal grid. Colorado Blue Blazer regular writes in, I'd reasonably chill with corporations regulating themselves if the management were subject to criminal prosecution for their evil acts. Interesting. Of course, that's not going to happen. I like the suggestion. Kate Nix writes in, Republicans recently brought up impeachment proceedings. Cuomo's emergency pandemic powers expire in like 2 weeks. Just let it end. Interesting. So I'll check in on the poll to see how folks are voting on that. Crazy Lit Asian says, neoliberalism leading to cuts of infrastructure to the bare bones is definitely bipartisan, be it frozen natural gas instruments with no backup or disintegrating high transmission lines brought down by untrimmed trees. That is unfortunately exactly right. You guys are the smartest audience in the world by a lot. So I love it. TYT.com/join. Breathe Rima says, so, okay, let me get this straight. Ted Cruz dropped his kids off in the country. He's vilified because they're criminals. Sounds legit. See, he never meant that stuff about Mexico either. Turks, Cenk and Anna. During the break for our audiences on some outlets like YouTube and Twitch, we read some of your comments. I said Jordan Ewell with Deep Dive. Deep Dive with Jordan Ewell is next after the post game on twitch.tv/TYT. That's true. Jordan, who Anna talked about in the last story, breaking part of the news about Ted Cruz, is one of our hosts, and he's on Twitch after us. But I said his handle on Twitter was @Jordan. That is not true. It's right there on the screen, Cenk. It's @Jordan Ewell, okay? And there goes him being a trendsetter. All right, Casper, back to you.
All right, let's talk about paid leave. With the coronavirus pandemic, I hope most Americans realize the importance of getting paid mandatory sick leave. But unfortunately, on a federal level, we don't have that in this country. So states are left to decide for themselves whether or not they're going to regulate companies to ensure that they offer employees mandatory paid sick leave. Now, a lot of states don't. One of those states is the state of Pennsylvania, where one lawmaker has actually been fighting pretty aggressively to prevent any potential legislation that could make sick leave mandatory for companies. This is State Representative Seth Grove, and he's been on the warpath for a while now. Representative Grove has been pushing for legislation to bar localities from imposing such requirements that provide employees with medical leave for ailments and injuries since 2013. Really taking up the good fight here. His latest bill, reintroducing the measure, would be retroactive to 2015, the year Democratic strongholds Philadelphia and Pittsburgh passed laws mandating paid sick leave. Now, what you should also know about this story is that Representative Grove is currently on paid sick leave as he's recovering from coronavirus symptoms.
Oops. Okay. So, first of all, they're going to strip out paid sick leave from the COVID relief bill. That leaves 87 million Americans without paid sick leave. And if you don't know the details of this, especially if you are wealthy or you live in a developed nation, you're going to be shocked at America's system. Right now, those 87 million people, if they get sick, no one cares. You have to show up to work, otherwise you get fired. You have the flu, I don't care. You have bronchitis, I don't care. You've got COVID, I don't care. You're gonna show up to work or you're gonna get fired. But wait a minute, I would give COVID to others. Don't care. In these preemption laws, they're stripping out even COVID relief. The Republicans fought the piece of the bill that would have earlier, in an earlier legislation at the federal level, would have said if you have COVID, you can get 2-week paid leave. It's not 2.5 months of paid leave. They're making it seem like, now they all of a sudden, if you're sick to the point of nearly dying, they want a day off. Bunch of socialists. No, we don't do that here in America. We drive you back into the fields and the mines and the plants, and we make you work at $7.25. And if you give the sickness to the rest of the coworkers, who cares? Now, do you know that among lower wage workers, about 73% of them don't have sick leave? You know how much of the higher paid workers in America, the white collar workers, don't have paid sick leave? Only 5%. So if you're in a white collar job, they don't even understand this. They're like, I bet you, I swear to God, you talk to executives, if they're not making those decisions, they're just a rando executive, and you told them that other people don't have paid sick leave, they wouldn't believe you. They're like, well, what happens if you get sick? Or they make you show up to work. They're like, no, there's no way that's true. And we live in the same country. Yes, and jerks like this, and I'm trying to be as polite as possible. The guy we're talking about in Pennsylvania, he's like, I don't care. No. Real freedom means the freedom to work on your deathbed and be fired if you don't. That's who these Republican barbarians are. They hate you. And this is not about bums. These are all working people. They hate the working class in this country.
Look, honestly, every break that workers have gotten in this country's history weren't just handed to them by corporate CEOs looking to do the right thing. They're not gonna do the right thing. They're gonna do what they wanna do in order to provide returns to their shareholders, to make profit, and they want to cut costs, right? So of course they're not going to pay for sick leave. They're not going to want to do it out of the kindness of their own hearts. The reason why we have the weekend, the reason why we have any, worker or workplace regulations is because it was fought for by organized labor. And we don't have that anymore. I mean, we have a very small percentage of workers who are unionized right now. And there really isn't enough power behind that in order to fight for what we need. And when you couple that with an incredibly corrupt political system, with money in politics, we're going to lose every time. And so I think it's ridiculous to leave it up to the states to decide for themselves whether or not they're going to offer worker protections or paid sick leave or paid family leave. You really do need some leadership from the federal government, but the federal government doesn't really care about you either. I think that's pretty clear. They care about their donors. They care about ensuring that they get reelected, and they need money in order to do that. And so they're going to side against you every single time. Doesn't matter if it's a Democrat or a Republican. And to be quite honest with you, I'm so tired of having the same annoying strategic debates about how the Democrats can accomplish it. They're clearly not serious about it because they're not fighting for it as a party. You might have a few progressives who try to make a stink about it, but at the end of the day, no one is really willing to put all of their energy behind ensuring that we have regulations on a federal level that protect the best interests of workers.
Look, Democrats are total losers. Let's just keep it real. So, and they don't mean a word of it. Look, we get proven right 1,000 times over here, and every time people don't get it. Not you guys. You guys get it. But the people in Washington media are paid not to get it. So Democrats, you're really not going to pass paid sick leave. You're going to take it out of corporate relief.
They're not.
And then when you go to bring it up as a standalone bill like minimum wage, they're going to say, "Oh, reconciliation, filibuster, hide behind technicalities, and have the media all support you by pretending those technicalities are real." The filibuster is not in the Constitution, is an old relic that was meant to protect lynching. I'm not joking or exaggerating, okay? And so the technicalities are totally irrelevant. Joe Biden could come out and do a press conference. He did a giant town hall the other day, normal patty cakes, right? Now here's what he could do instead. The Republicans don't want you to have paid sick leave in the middle of a pandemic. They say that you should not be able to take one day off if you're a working class man in America. Now you give all that BS mythology fables about, "Oh, I'm from Scranton, Pennsylvania, I'm regular Joe." Regular Joe stands up for a guy who can't take a single goddamn day off. But what are you doing? Well, Joe Manchin and cinema and reconciliation and the parliamentarian. I don't give a goddamn what the parliamentarian says. You could end the filibuster. You could do executive orders. You can do anything you want. You're the president of the United States of America. He doesn't want the paid sick leave. He doesn't want minimum wage to pass, and he uses all that as an excuse. Now back to the Republicans. This Grove guy in Pennsylvania is part of ALEC. ALEC is a lobbying group formed by corporations. They literally write bills for corrupt, crony capitalist pigs like Grove. And then Grove hands it in. So why do I say that? In this case, he does preemption. Pittsburgh and Philly says, look, somebody's got COVID, somebody's sick. We're gonna allow them sick leave. Not outright, a week, 2 weeks. That's it, right? And Grove gets a bill from the corporation saying, no, that will cut into our profits by about 27 cents. Back to the mines. And Grove goes, yes, sir, absolutely, sir. And we're preempting. Why are we preempting? Freedom. We're freeing the workers to get their asses kicked and maybe die on the job, right? And then he says this, because remember, Republican donors, and by the way, Democratic donors, they don't want smart politicians. They just want an idiot who'll take orders and do as he's told. So Grove says this, filling that role. If Pittsburgh and Philly want to be San Francisco, they could just go to San Francisco. I'm pretty sure the cities of Pittsburgh and Philadelphia cannot move to San Francisco, you goddamn moron.
And I don't want anyone to think that Pennsylvania is an isolated case. This is true of so many different parts of the country. And again, I mean, we don't have politicians who are fighting for us, and we don't have powerful organized labor to also fight on behalf of workers. So
yeah,
the system it's just rigged against you. I don't know what else to say. It's so, because that's why when people are like, I get the urge to just blow off people like QAnon conspiracy theorists as crazy and stupid, but we live in a system that makes no sense. And when you live in a system that makes no sense and no one's answering your questions or explaining what's really going on, you're willing to believe anything to make sense of this nonsensical system that we're living in right now. I'm not trying to make excuses for them, but I do think it's part of the problem.
No, Anna, you're 100% right. Because when the media says, no, it actually, does the system make sense? Yes, it's built by the donors. They pay the politicians, they bribe them to the tunes of billions of dollars, and then they get exactly what they wanted. That actually makes logical sense. The only reason why the QAnon people and the right wing, and Anna, I'll go further. Even though they're nuts and they're looking for solutions in all the wrong places, their instinct, their original instinct that there's something wrong is actually better than the Democratic voters. Democratic voters eat up that New York Times, NPR BS like it's breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Oh yeah, no, politicians are honorable and they're having a debate about the reconciliation and the filibuster, and they have principles. No, they don't. And so what the right wing is sensing, you guys are liars. Right wing, you're right. The general national media in that particular case, which is massive, is lying to you. It's all corrupt. It's all corrupt. But it's not Soros and anti-Semitic weirdo conspiracy theories and nobody's eating babies. No, it's simple. They want to make money. They give money to politicians. They get favors back. So they not giving you paid sick leave saves them money. So that's why they bribe the politicians who say you can't get paid sick leave. There, I made sense of it. It's so easy. Why does it take an online show to tell you the most obvious things in the world? Why doesn't the so-called best news organizations in America, like New York Times, NBC, all these billion-dollar corporations, why don't they tell you the most obvious thing in the world? It's the goddamn bribery. So, and look, last thing, where's the hope? Here's the hope. And if this doesn't work, then I'm gonna give up on all politicians, and we're gonna politically just forget about electing people. We're just gonna talk about tearing them down, okay? So, but it's got to work, and being constructive is 1,000 times better. And I have all the hope in the world. NinaTurner.com/hello. Now, why do I say that? I'm not just saying that I like Nina Turner, she's a progressive, all that stuff. Somebody's got to get in there and have the courage to do a press conference and say, Joe Biden, you're gonna take out paid family leave and $15 minimum wage from this COVID relief bill? No, you're not. I'm gonna call you out. You know that you can stop this. Manchin Cinema. Here, let me tell you why Manchin and Cinema are doing it. It's their donors. And if Nina doesn't do that, then nobody's gonna do it. And we're all screwed. But I think Nina is gonna do it. And if she does, she'll rock their world. And by the way, all the progressives in Congress, you could do that now. It just takes a little bit of courage to call out your so-called colleagues. Anyway, NinaTurner.com/hello. There is hope.
All right, when we come back for the second half of the show, we'll talk about food in dumpsters and how Americans aren't even allowed to eat that. We'll be right back.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.